Radio Waves by Ariav. Let's begin. So before I go into extensive detail on what radio waves are, I'd like to go over some key terms, just so you understand this video a little bit more. The first one of these is electromagnetic radiation. And so this is a type of radiation that includes visible light, X-rays, radio waves, and many more. And as long as the electric and magnetic fields of these waves are varying simultaneously, it is considered electromagnetic radiation. So a frequency, so this is just the rate at which something, in this case a radio wave, will move over a specific period of time. Pretty simple. And then amplitude, well, that's the maximum extent of vibration measured from the position of physical balance. And this may make absolutely no sense right now, but I promise you by the end of this video, it will. And finally, a wave. And hopefully you know what this is, but if you don't, it's an oscillation and or movement back and forth at regular speed. And so a wave is always accompanied by a transfer of energy that travels through space or mass. So now a brief history of radio waves. So they were first found by James Clerk Maxwell, and he didn't even use radio waves really. He was just able to make a mathematical equation that proves that they were out there. And this was in like the 1860s. So long way to go until we have our nowadays FM radio and cell phones. They were first created, these waves, by Heinrich Hertz, and he still didn't have a use for them. He didn't think, oh, I should use them for FM radio, but he was able to create some of them, which is pretty cool. And they were actually first used, they were found uses by Guccelli Marconi, and he was an Italian inventor from the 1890s. And his inventions actually led to the modern-day telephone, the radio, and the walkie-talkie and all that kind of jazz. And so now the anatomy of a radio wave. And in this case, let's talk about the wavelength. So if you don't know what a wavelength is that little diagram should explain it a little bit. It's basically in between the two waves, the distance. So a radio wave is a form of electromagnetic radiation, if you didn't already know that. And that means that it will have relatively low frequencies and relatively long wavelengths. So a wavelength on a radio wave will be about 100 kilometers to just 1 millimeter, which is pretty large compared to some waves, which are very, very small. Now, a frequency of a radio wave. So though a radio wave does have long wavelengths, they have pretty short frequencies. So a frequency corresponds to the wavelength. It's proportional. And so the frequencies range from 10 kilohertz to 60,000 megahertz. And so that's a pretty big range. So hopefully this picture will kind of explain it a bit better if you don't understand. At the top, we have a high-frequency radio wave. So as you can see, the wavelengths are pretty small, but there's many oscillations. So it's a high frequency. But the other one has longer wavelengths, which consequently will cause them to be a very low frequency. Now the amplitude of a radio wave. The amplitude of a radio wave is a function of power. So a higher power transmitter will create a higher amplitude signal to the source. So this means a 10-watt transmitter will put out less amplitude than a 100-watt transmitter. Pretty simple. Now the uses of radio waves. So the uses include to send information from one place to another place. And this is the primary way radio waves are used. So a radio station can send you a signal, and you can pick it up on your radio, and you can listen to all your favorite songs. Next to these is it also uses radars. So it's used in radars a bit differently. How it's used in radars is to basically send a signal, and if it hits an object, it'll come back. So it's the same way that it's used in sonar. I'm not sure if you know what that is, so this is a radar, this is a radio, and this is a diagram explaining how radar works. So this is a radar, as you can see, and I'm imagining this one is actually sending a very large radio wave, and it's going to be able to hit an asteroid or any other thing, sending back, seeing if there's something in the way. And this is a radio, and if you look closely, you'll see that actually every radio station is a different frequency. So 95, as this radio has, is the 95 megahertz. So when you're tuning into 105.3, that's 105.3 megahertz. Next, we have sonar and radio waves. So this bat and this dolphin are both sending a signal, and they're both hitting an object, so it's being sent back. Next, we have some fun facts about radio waves. So the first one the radio waves can actually keep you warm in winter, and this is because the heat they emit, which is, though I definitely wouldn't recommend you use this as a way to make yourself warm because it will cause cancer. The next is fact 2, and that is when you send a text message from your phone, what you're really doing is actually sending a radio wave. So this means that you're sending thousands of radio waves every month. So if you didn't understand this before, basically a radio transmitter is sending a signal and a radio receiver is receiving it. So that's how walkie-talkies work, that's how radios work, that's how everything that uses it. And yeah, thank you very much.